According to the Cambridge English Dictionary, trauma researchers emphasize the resilience of the human psyche. Resilience meaning the ability to be happy, healthy, or successful again after something difficult or bad has happened, or the ability of a substance to return to its usual shape after being bent, stretched, or pressed. Welcome to the Arose from Rubble podcast, where there's no good, bad, right or wrong opinion, and no discussion is off limits. Arose from Rubble is primarily about resilience in the absence of perfection, the knowledge we gain and apply on our journey to self-actualization, physically, mentally, and most importantly, spiritually. Join and explore with me as we journey toward our higher selves. We'll explore spirituality, occult knowledge, practical metaphysics, universal law, self-actualization, relationships, life, and love. And I'm your host, Dia Rose. Greetings, gods and goddesses, and welcome to the Arose from Rubble podcast. I'm your host, Dia Rose. Today's episode is about distractions. And we'll start out with the definition or the etymology of the word distraction. The drawing away of the mind from one point of course to another or others. From Latin, distractionem. A pulling apart, separating, noun of action from past participle, stem of distract here, draw in different directions, distract, sense of a drawing of mind in different directions, mental confusion or bewilderment. In the 1590s, meaning violent mental disturbance, excitement, stimulating madness, meaning a thing or fact that causes mental diversion or bewilderment. That was the 1610 definition. I want to say that it's important for us to understand in this third dimensional paradigm or program that we are operating in, that some refer to as the matrix, that we call the collective consciousness at this point, is the operating system in which we are functioning on. And the programs that we are distracted by right now are by design in this operating system. So until we evolve in our consciousness and we realize that this is a program that we are operating in, and we are able to create for ourselves and function within the program that we create, I think it's important for us to discuss the distractions that prevent us from spiritually evolving, how it affects us spiritually, and what exactly they are. Like, what are some of the distractions in this 3D paradigm? So in order for us to ascend on a collective basis, we first have to focus individually and get ourselves in order on an individual basis so we can balance ourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. So with that being said, this episode is about distractions because I want to discuss some of the areas in our lives where we are distracted. The first area that I want to discuss is the materialism and the fact that we live in a society that's based on us being consumers rather than producers. And we know that particularly based on the financial system. And not just the financial system, but depending on where you are in your conscious awareness, if you are aware that we are living in a corporate society and we are ourselves deemed as corporations, then we won't necessarily be able to make those distinctions. But I want to talk about the materialism and consumerism aspect of our lives, because we see that in every facet. Accumulating material possessions only provide us with temporary satisfaction. But on a spiritual level, we need to understand how that voids us, and our souls don't become touched by our realities because we so focused on our external selves rather than the spiritual aspect of ourselves. So true fulfillment can only come from your spiritual connection, and your spiritual connection is what usually leads you to your purpose. But if you so focused on the external aspect of self, I think in recovery, I learned through my dad that in recovery, they call it being a dressed up garbage can. When you so focused on your outside that your insides are messed up, that speaks for itself. This thought process of the material aspect is what they mean when even in the Bible, when it says, what it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul. When we so caught up in our monetary value, how we perceive monetarily, or from a materialistic perspective, that's something that we need to ask ourselves. How important is that to us, and how much of that do we define ourselves by? I would also say the environmental impact that being consumers has on us. When you think about what we spend most of our money on is enjoyment as far as things. And where do we usually go? We usually go to the metropolitan or the downtown area where they have all of the fancy stores. They got the big buildings, and every city you go to, at least in Western civilization, that's where everything fancy is, as far as what society standard of fancy is. That's where you got the big buildings. That's where you got all of the nice, expensive shopping centers and stores. We don't think about how that affects us on an environmental level, and how much it degrades the environment to put all of these buildings in these places, and not understanding the spiritual sacrifice that's being made, and how being in that atmosphere affects us on a level that's not sustainable at this point. We can't keep building buildings and knocking down trees, because we exchange our breaths with nature. We need the trees and the plants. They produce the oxygen. We produce the carbon dioxide. That's an exchange. So that's what they talking about when they pushing this whole carbon footprint and carbon emissions and all of that. The carbon, if you know anything about biology, then you understand that we are carbon. So when they talking about alleviating the carbon footprint, that's you. And we don't even realize how much we participating in our own demise, in the enjoyment of those things that are not to our benefit. And you know what? I had an epiphany that the strangest thing is when we plan vacation, we usually plan to go somewhere that's nature filled. Somewhere where we could be amongst the water or the mountains or the jungle, the trees. So we spend our money to be in situations that we should be trying to create as a lifestyle, rather than having those temporary experiences once a year or twice a year, 3 times if you're lucky. It's counterproductive. We need to take a look at how our thought processes and the distraction of all of the things that we pleasure in keeps us away from creating or being in tune with nature. I think collectively we're going back to that. We got a lot of teachers out here that's promoting grounding and our connections with going out in nature. We understand now after 2020 how important it is for us to be out in the sun. Those things are free. And we need to get in tune and go back to that. We need to consider how impermanent the things that we possess actually are, and how much material wealth passes with time, and how the pursuit of material wealth can distract us from recognizing how the pursuits pass with time. How a lot of things that we aspire to do, be, and have are fads. But your spiritual journey is going to evolve your soul, which is the aspect of you that is eternal. So we need to focus more on our enduring values and our inner wealth. Health is wealth. That's going to facilitate your inner wealth. You feeling good about how you look with no clothes on, rather than that expensive attire, perhaps. Or how at peace you could feel without any what we perceive as money in our pockets. Being able to value your peace, your quiet. You know, it's like when you got a pocket full of money, you want to figure out how you're going to spend it, so you go outside. It's the opposite of that. You don't have any money, but I'm going to stay inside. But how can I enjoy myself? Meaning myself. Not enjoy myself, but enjoy myself. Enjoy being with me, with nothing. Like, what do I have to offer me that I can find pleasure in by spending time with me? Not being distracted by the physical enjoyment that searching and seeking is going to bring. Our intrinsic nature, our intrinsic value. That affects us when we think about what we do to earn money. You know what I'm saying? It kind of explains like what they call, or what will be described as the midlife crisis. The doctor does all this education. Oh, and if you don't like school, oh Lord. You know how long doctors have to go to school to actually become doctors so they could earn this big salary. So imagine going through all of that to realize that you want to own a bakery and you want to make donuts. Like, that's what you're really passionate about. That describes the man that became a doctor and got married to his wife that he met in school to get his doctorate or his PhD, or if he's a doctor in medicine, his MD. And then he turns around and leaves the wife, the kids, the dog, the cat, or she turns around and does the same thing for her innate passion. Because she met this person on the pursuit of something that she really wasn't passionate about. Because society told her that was a noble profession, or that was the profession where you could become most financially astute, or, you know, it's looked up to in society. Not that we don't need doctors, because we do, but the question is that who you innately are. Like, is that what you innately passionate about? Or do you believe that because you were pressured by those who raised you to be a doctor or a lawyer or one of those other professions that we deem to be, you know, the most important in society, because it's important for us to be the most important according to society. The challenge is how we look at the material and consumer aspects of ourselves and how that affects us. Next, I want to talk about social media and how we on digital overload. Like, it's crazy, and how that's a huge distraction. We all know, a lot of us, even myself, has been, man, you wake up and the first thing you do is grab your phone, even if it's to turn your alarm off. You know what I'm saying? You got what they call it, muscle memory, where that's your instinct to pick up your phone. And all you got to do is see a notification and you off to the races. Before you know it, you done slept to your snooze going off again, but your phone in your hand, you didn't even get to go back to sleep to get them extra few minutes, because we on overload, digital overload, if not social media overload. Just being on the phone, whether it's checking your email, you know, that's the imbalance in being in this technological age. And the need for us to find balance with experience in this technological age. it's imperative for us to get some balance in that aspect. And I know social media, it does foster connections, but a lot of times those connections are superficial. You don't know these people, and a lot of them, if you really knew who they really were outside of the facade that they putting on, you wouldn't want to be friends with them anyway. I see friends, and I ain't judging nobody. I got about 200 friends on Facebook, and I don't generally accept friend requests from people that I don't know or haven't had a physical acquaintance with in some form or fashion. I'm just not picking up people on social media. Like, we came face to face at some point, even if it was just meeting somebody in passing and we exchange information, but that's still about 200 and something people. And I know people, you can't even send them a request no more because they got thousands and thousands of people, and it's like a high that's unmatched that you will get on just from not understanding your biology and just from not understanding psychology, that you get in this rush that epitomizes superficial. It's crazy, and that disconnects us, and it's a distraction to us spiritually because we not really facilitating or fostering deep, meaningful relationships like we used to not have a choice. You know what I'm saying? We need to go back to requiring a physical presence, like in general interaction, rather than being on overload from all of this stuff that's fake. You know, like that's the concern with technology taking over, is us not having any balance. And the reason that we don't have balance in those areas is because we on overload. There's no distinction between what's real and what's fake. Then you got the trap of comparison. And the rule of thumb is don't compare yourself amongst yourself. When you got people that's only showing you the best aspects of their life, the best outfits that they have, the best places that they ever been, the best dream that they could dream, they done put it together on social media, and here it is, you depressed because your man or your woman ain't showing up in the same way that this other person is. Your kids' grades ain't as good. Yo, whatever story that they want to tell, and we gin for it just because we don't know how to draw the line in the sand between fact and fiction. Not to mention the spiritual aspect and how that impedes on our ability to have acceptance about who we are as individuals in our spiritual growth process, and the ability for us to be able to detach from needing the external validation of likes and agreement, and people believe in everything that they see and seeking that external validation. Like, what good is it gonna do you for your man to tell you, or your woman to tell you you look good, which is what you say you require, when you really seeking the validation of 3, 4, 500, sometimes thousands of other people telling you? Like, what is it really gonna mean? And they telling you based on a millisecond, not even that, of you taking that photograph at the right angle with the right light, let alone a filter. A filter that can actually change how a person is really showing up. Like, we gotta do better. We gotta do better. When we look at the technological distractions, we gotta also consider how it interrupts our ability to be present. If you got your notifications on your phone and you aren't being mindful, you meditating, and then ding, or that vibration comes, you done lost your whole vibe because of a notification on your phone. You know, for us to connect spiritually, for us to practice meditation, for us to practice mindfulness, that's going to require for us to be quiet, for us to quiet everything around us, our minds, our bodies, for us to be able to be still, all of that. All of those aspects of spiritual exploration requires for us to alleviate the distractions of technology. So be mindful of that. Some other distractions that we might deal with in our regular lives that can prevent us or hinder our spiritual growth is our busy lifestyles, us overcommitting, and lack of concern for self. I know that was huge for me, realizing how much I don't take care of myself. I was putting everything and everybody before me, and it goes back to the whole plane, the airplane, when you board on the airplane and you got the flight attendant showing you got to put the mask on yourself first, even before your little baby. Because who's going to take care of that little baby? Who's even going to care enough to save that little baby if you done gave the little baby your last breath? And that's difficult, but as a mother, we got to put the mask on ourselves first. Our lack of self-care and our hectic lifestyles help us neglect ourselves. And we have to understand that spiritual evolution is going to evolve or involve us taking care of ourselves and nurturing our minds, bodies, and our spirits. Limiting our reflection time, having busy schedules. Being self-aware involves you taking time with your spirit. With you being able to evolve spiritually, it's going to be important for you to be aware of self. And that's hindered when you don't have time and space to actually contemplate what you want to do, where you want to go, where you have been, what just happened, what's about to happen, what you would like to happen. You're going to need time to reflect. We can't be overcommitted and too busy to take that time out. Being stressed out, being burnt out, dealing with chronic stress, it not only leads to the breakdown of our bodies, but the breakdown of our minds and our spirit as well. So we got to be more balanced in our approach to dealing with overcommitting ourselves. It's imperative for us to be mindful when we scheduling things, to take time out for our mental, our spiritual, and our emotional health. Another huge thing that I want to touch on is entertainment and how it's a huge form of escapism, to the extent that you got people that are trying to emulate their regular everyday life, working a 9-to-5 or with a small business, trying to emulate celebrities, trying to buy the same bags, wear the same clothes, live the same life, portray the same image. We got to understand that was designed to distract us from you. You the celebrity. You are the celebrity. These celebrities are designed distractions, and if they ain't showed you nothing between 2020 and now, that they sellouts, that these stories that they coming up with all play into the distraction to keep you away from you, to keep you comparing yourself to them when they don't even exist. Those, they are bought and paid for. They souls were sold at the time they signed those agreements. Their job is to influence you into your own demise, is what the job is. And in these spaces, particularly these podcast spaces, where we use them and their situations and these control narratives to point to the situations that's going on in our regular, spiritual, most important lives, more important lives, is ridiculous. And we have to understand that these people are bought and paid for. They are actors and actresses, and the world is a stage. That's why I refer to it as this program, because this is a program. And when we start viewing it as that, we can become the creator of the game instead of being a non-player character in this game. That's what we showing up as. So when we constantly in these podcast spaces and in any type of communication with the public refer to these celebrities, it's ridiculousness, y'all. And we have to stop, and we have to understand that these people already paid for they souls is bought and paid for. Your responsibility here is to save yours. So it should not be in comparison to them. They the only reason that they have the influence that they have is because it's control. Do you think that the media system would allow them to be present on all these different networks and have that level of exposure and ability to influence without being able to control the narrative? Absolutely not. So why is it that we still using them for talking points and for comparison purposes. It's ridiculous. And when I'm talking about celebrities, I'm talking about these sports too. All of it's planned, programmed. It's a part of the distraction to keep you away from self. Politics, all of it. And all of that, Babylon is falling, y'all. And all of it is part of the breakdown. Stop giving it your attention. Their responsibility is to harvest your energy for the beings that cannot exist on this plane of existence without your energy and your participation. If we stand up, the game is going to fall off the table. Our responsibility is to evolve spiritually and stand up so the game can fall off the table. I want to talk about passive consumption. And what I mean by that is that our spiritual evolution involves our active participation. We have to actively be seeking it, not passively consuming everything that they put before us. How we just take it on, anything that they say, anything that they do, any story that they drop, anything that they put out. We just keep going for it. It's steady taking you away from yourself. Every little thing that they put, oh, such and such broke up. Or did you hear about such and such? Or this player took a knee. All that shit was by design. Stop it. Stop it. Engage what your own thoughts are and what your own emotions are. What is your spirit telling you right now? You are responsible for creating your reality. That means you have to go in yourself to find out what the truth is. Stop conforming to the collective consensus. Don't y'all understand that this is about divide and conquer? So as long as we allow their narratives to control our thinking and our thought processes, we cannot create for ourselves. Yeah, marriages and families are breaking up because that's what they promoting. What's going on in your house? What are you doing to stay connected to your partner? That's what matters. That's what you control. That's your creation. See, when we hone in on our individual selves and our individual lives and what we creating as individuals, we'll see the manifestation of that on a collective level because we got ourselves together as individuals. That's how you make a collective impact. Get yourself together. How are you showing up? Then you're going to vibrate others towards you that have the same similar consensus, because that's what frequency and vibration does. We magnetize ourselves, which means we start to attract like, attracts like. That's how we affect the collective. So that's something that we have to take control of. We also have to hone in on our distorted perceptions of what happiness is and stop relying on external sources for our happiness. Like, that's been one of the biggest lessons that I've learned on my spiritual awakening. I've heard it so many times in my life. You can't depend on somebody else to make you happy. And I didn't understand that. But I understand that now because I've taken responsibility for my own personal fulfillment. Even though I'm as close as I am in my relationship, because I have a husband. I cannot depend. My personal fulfillment is what my job is here. And in me feeling fulfilled on a personal level with myself based on what I want to do as an individual, that's going to spill over to my relationship, my personal happiness and my personal fulfillment. I can't do nothing but be happy in my relationship, because if I'm being my best self, if I'm exploring myself and my own gifts and my own talents, and I'm creating my happiness based on what I'm desiring to create, and my mate is doing the same thing because he's only my mate, because we vibrating on the same level, we can't do nothing but be happy. So we have to generate that and control that aspect of our lives on our own, and trust that our vibration is going to attract to us what is supposed to be a part of our reality based on the magnetism that's created from our own energetic field, that's created around us based on the energy that we are vibrating and disseminating out into the universe. That's what we got to get a hold of, and that's what the understanding has to become, so we can understand how we facilitate our creations. Because if we don't, guess what? Everything outside of you that you lending your attention to is what's going to create your reality if you don't create it. If you're not at the table, you on the menu, period. So we got to quit lending that outside of ourselves, or your happiness, your truth, your peace, your joy. All of that's going to be distorted by a view that you given rather than the view that you are creating. So when we integrate our spirituality to the forefront of what we perceive and as happiness being, then we can focus on our inner fulfillment rather than the external stimulus that we are given because of the distractions that are being placed before us intentionally to keep us from evolving. That's your superpower. Your superpower is yourself, self-awareness, self-acceptance. Knowledge of self breeds fulfillment. Personal fulfillment breeds personal happiness. Personal happiness is going to vibrate towards you others that are personally happy, that are creating so you can co-create. And in turn, will create a collective sense of purpose and happiness, which will manifest into a visual collective peace and happiness. Next, I want to talk about our ambitions and how much our ego plays into our ambition, and how we achieve a whole bunch of emptiness based on our external ego-driven ambitions. And how the only reason that we pursue certain things like business, what you going to school for? Business. I want to start a business. When everybody is not meant to do those things. And because somebody is successful or was deemed to be successful based on this picture that they paint and this illusion that you calling your reality because you're not creating your own reality, that's an ego-driven ambition. When you aspiring to live somebody else's dream because of what you perceive that they feel and because of this picture that they paint. Like, true fulfillment is going to come from you being aligned with your own personal ambitions and what your own deeper purpose is. From you exploring yourself and finding out, who am I? Why am I here? What do I want? What do I want to create in my reality? And detaching that from the ego aspect of yourself. And using your spiritual eye to dissect that aspect of you and moving out of the ego. Us not neglecting our inner growth. Because ego-driven ambitions only prioritize external success. We don't think about our inner selves, which is how we become dressed up garbage cans. Because you spiritually bankrupt, but you financially free. What it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? When we look at ourselves and what we are creating from a spiritual perspective, it's going to foster and facilitate the integration of our personal development with our external achievements. It's going to merge and it'll make sense. Then you are creating on purpose. You aspiring on your purpose based on your innate desires, based on who you truly are, because you've explored that aspect of yourself. You didn't run from it. Then we have to consider and think about the interpersonal impact of our ego-driven ambitions. Like when we doing things to gain things externally, that puts strains on the things about our lives that are most important, like our relationships. That's what causes most division. When they talk about the divorce and the divorce rates, why do people get divorced? Besides infidelity, finances, selfishness is what it boils down to. That's the biggest demise of relationships. I've learned that, and I've analyzed, and I've realized that in this society, we associate having more with being more as it relates to our aspirations and our personal values. And that's how we can come up with concepts like high value men and high value women, which is ridiculous to me, rather than high virtue men and high virtue women. Substance. Characteristics of substance. Like, how are we going to let something of a physical nature define our value? That's how caught up we are in this physical, and how much we are neglecting who we are from a spiritual perspective. It's ridiculous. We spend a whole lot of our resources trying to escape from the reality that we create based on the things that we give value to from a perspective that has no substance. It's counterproductive. And that's what happens, though, when we allow society to dictate what success is for us. Using that thought process, my question is, what happens to our self-worth when we realize that investments are fake and that money is not backed by anything of substance? That being that homeowner doesn't ever mean that you're going to own that house. Or when being able to eat and feed our families is contingent on the functioning of an industry that's outside of us, that's outside of self. That your health, that you use in the healthcare system to monitor, is designed to keep you sick. How is it even possible for we in this technological advancement age? And when you think about that, and we think about, just say healthcare for instance, we got all these technological advancements, but we more sick than we've ever been. People going to the doctor one day and finding out they terminal and dying 2 months later. That makes me think about when I was growing up in the projects, we had a couple of pharmacies. We had Kaplan and we had Liberty. I remember we knew the pharmacy secretary and we also knew the pharmacist personally. You can go in there to pick up medicine for your grandmama or a family member, and they go right to it. Now you go in Walgreens, you got the drive-through that's going out of the parking lot. You got inside, the line is to the back of the store. How, Sway? How is that? It makes no sense. Think about it. This is the system that we believe in. It's got to break down. It's got to break down. All these behaviors, all of these processes, all of it is distractions. All of these systems, the financial system, the healthcare system, the education system, the religious system, all of these systems that we talking about, all of those things have been put here to distract us. But that was in the age of Pisces. Now we move into the age of Aquarius, which is the age of knowing. And more than anything, knowing thyself. And the earth is balancing herself. And I say herself because the earth is feminine energy, fellas. So don't get mad. That's what the whole matriarchy and patriarchy thing comes in at. We moving in cycles. And if you're doing any of your homework and you understand the cycles, we going back to the matriarchy, because the matriarchy is the earth. And the earth is feminine energy, and her whole goal is love. So we don't have to worry about being displaced. So if you concerned about the patriarchy falling, then you need to go back to the drawing board and do your homework. Because Mother Earth is about balance. It's not about decentralizing men to the extent that it's no need for you. It's about a balanced perspective, not going from one extreme to the next. We can't defeat the patriarchy with feminism. That's the extreme. We talking about universal law, the universal law of rhythm. We talking about ebbs and flows. We talking about duality. We talking about one side and the other side. Then we talking about rhythm. The pendulum swings equally left and right, but the goal is the balance. Our jobs right now is to get ourselves in alignment with the earth. Mentally, we got to understand that this is a spiritual water we are in, and the battlefield is in the mind. We fight not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and spiritual wickedness in high places. The battlefield is in the mind. Get your mind right. The first universal principle is mentalism. All is mind. The universe is mental. Get your mind right. Then we got to get our physical right by understanding that we need to create our own food and water supplies for sustenance purposes. We cannot sustain depending on the same system that's designed to break us down. We have to become self-sufficient. Then we got our spirituality. We got to get that together. Because regardless as to what your religious beliefs are, the truth is innate. When something resonates with your spirit, you know in your heart. Trust that. Stop trusting all these outside constructs. Even me. Do your homework. I'm talking about my truth. I'm just sharing it to give us a way to connect if you desire, if you so desire. These are breadcrumbs. You got to create your own road. I'm just here to facilitate the process of you trusting yourself, you knowing yourself. The days of being led are over. The days of being looking for a leader outside of yourself are long gone. Lead yourself. Govern your own mental. That's what government means. That's why we got to understand word magic. Government. Govern your own mental. Stop talking about your leaders, your community leaders, and leader this and you the leader. Lead yourself, lead your life, lead your house. You are the leader. That's the problem. And the problem is the government's got too big. We don't even need all of that. Government should be community based. The police should be community police. If we start there, I'm not saying it's not a need for us to have some type of organization, but think about it. If government was community-based, it would be so much better. In order to hold any position in that office, you need to live in that community. That means you're held accountable within that community. In order to police that community, you need to live in that community. So you ain't abusing other people's kids because people know your kids. They know your wife. They know your family. They know where you live. So you held accountable from a moral perspective. We need to hoin it back in, bring it back home, make it small. And the only way we gonna understand that is if we can trust ourselves. God is not outside of you. God is innate. God is in you. When you hold yourself accountable and accept responsibility for the conditions that you call your life, and you take responsibility for your creations and your happiness, the only distraction you're gonna have from your life is peace. Peace of mind. That's it, you guys, for today's episode. Distractions. What are your distractions? How do you get to the point where your only distraction in this life is peace? Thank you guys for listening. Thanks for listening to the Rose from Rubble podcast. As a disclaimer, I am not a licensed therapist, counselor, psychologist, or psychiatrist. I'm a student of metaphysics and occult knowledge who is bona fide in life, relationship, and self-actualization. If you would like your questions addressed live or in private, or perhaps you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the show, feel free to email me at dia@arosefromrubble.com. That's DEA at arosefromrubble.com. Also, subscribe on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and Instagram at A Rose from Rubble. And again, thanks for listening. That's it.